and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. Prime Minister Oleksiy Honcharuk has released a 5-year action plan for Ukraine that sets development of human capital and the economy, defense, quality of life, and European integration as priorities. Leading his cabinet as the technocratic government, Honcharuk promised to, quote, continuously invest in science, education, and culture while seeking to create conditions for the delivery of quality and accessible services to people. In 5 years, the Prime Minister wants the economy to grow by 40%. To discuss this and more, we're joined in the studio today by Dmytro Vasilyev. He is a political expert. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you for the invitation.
So, a 5-year action plan. On the one hand, experts say that it's useful and usually fruitful to plan in advance, to plan then more than 1 year ahead. On the other hand, the 5-year action plan reminds of a Soviet Union era times. What could be the pros and the contras of a 5-year action plan?
Of course, it can resemble some sort of Soviet Union planning for 5 years, and very often when we talk about Soviet Union, those plans were kind of stagnated plans, which were not in development. And when we look here, I guess the new government, they want to have a vision for 5 years, but actually they don't want to make it sure that actually that what they planned, that what they wrote, it must be just like that, just one frame, and you cannot go beyond. So my guesstimate and my hope is that what they're trying to do, they're trying to put the vision for 5 years changes for Ukraine, and basically that is the kind of a making plan. Which is good, because usually when we take 1 year planning for the budget, it is something when we try to make sure that actually we can meet our we can have a situation with our ends meeting.
Right.
And just making sure that we have enough revenues and we have enough money for spendings, and that's it. But we never thought about development and some kind of progress vision where the country goes in terms of economy, in terms of social services, in terms of development of the culture and education and medical services. So in these terms, I support the idea of the government. It doesn't give me any kind of resemblance of the Soviet Union past. Planning 5 years, planning пятилетки, as they say in the Soviet Union time. This is something which just set good vision.
Okay, that could be one of the variants that this is a vision plan. Yet, the new government is operating precise numbers. Per se, Mr. Honcharuk said that they plan to increase the growth of the Ukrainian economy by 40%. In order to achieve this goal, the Prime Minister said that the next year, Ukrainian GDP must grow by 5%, and then in the period of 2021-2024, at least by 7%. And I have a quote by him here that goes, in addition, the technocratic government aims to ensure that each family's utility bills do not exceed 15% of their income. In order to achieve these goals,
okay, when we calculate 40% and we look at the planning of this year, it's about 3.2% of growth. Next year, as I heard from you, 5 years growth, so it means 7.2.
It's not for me, it's for Mr. Honcharuk.
Yeah, I mean, your quote from Mr. Honcharuk. So it means 7.2% for 2 years, and then at least 7% every year.
Right.
3 years more. 3 multiplied 7, it means 21. 21 plus 7, it's 28.2. It is not 40. So in these terms, this is something which gives me a lot of concerns and worries, because we see a great declaration. And as I told before, I support this declaration because this is a great vision for development of the country. But what is really lacking on this stage is actual formulas. How do you want to succeed?
The algorithm of achieving the set goal.
What do you want to plan to do? I mean, what are you actually doing in order to achieve that? Of course, they will be saying about the land reforms and opening of the land market. Of course, they will be saying about casinos. They will be saying about different kind of possibilities and opportunities for growing our economy. But this is something which is very general and generalistic. So I really want to hear the actual plan, because that what I see right now is the great vision, but still not plan, as for me.
Except for opening the land market and legalizing the casinos, what else should we expect? What kind of reforms? Are there going to be changes in the taxation of the Ukrainian citizens?
Taxation is extremely important. When we look at this taxation reform, which they already put through the parliament, and it is some sort of blocked right now from opposition parties, there are two laws, 1053 1 and 1073. This is about small businessmen, in Ukrainian called FOP. And this is something which gives a lot of concerns and worries to development of the businesses from those industries, because they are cooperating with different kind of middle businesses. They're doing a lot of jobs with restaurant business and sales, etc., etc. And this is not because our kind of middle businesses want to optimize the taxation and not to pay money to the state. It's just because they want to survive. Because on the top of taxation, there are a lot of spendings they have to do because of corruption system and because of sometimes criminal system around the systems in this country. And because of that, it gives a lot of concerns to taxation. On one hand, Prime Minister Honcharuk saying that we don't want to higher taxation. We want to make sure that actually they have a level which will invest in the economy of Ukraine, and give a lot of stimulus for that, stimulations for that. But at the same time, that's what they are proposing, and that what is set in the parliament. It is something which is to the contrary. Again, when we're talking not about small business, but about big businesses and middle and big businesses. For example, there is a legislation 1210. It's about rentas. And here, when we take our companies who are working with the land and what is inside of the lands, our so-called, I don't know this English term, GOKI.
Okay.
If you know the term, you can help me. But basically what they're saying, experts in this area, they're saying that our enterprises, Ukrainian enterprises, are already in a very bad competition positions, even with the Russians. And if they decided to adopt this law, it can lead to worsening situation to really serious stand, because the rentas will be about 10 times bigger than in Russia, for example. So it means that actually our Ukrainian companies will become even less competitive, and it means that they will be in a situation perhaps to slow down the business or even to stop the business, to say to the workers goodbye. And basically it can lead to a situation when our skilled workers will work not in Ukraine but in some border countries in the future because of the situation. And it can also lead to a situation when we will lose about $120 million in our budget a year. So when we look at
there is some gap.
When we look at this, we understand that a great declaration is wonderful, but you have to show examples when it leads to realizing and achieving those great goals.
I agree. Let's talk about the IMF mission a little bit. We had an IMF mission here in Kyiv in September, starting September 12th through September 26th. to discuss the cooperation between Ukraine and the IMF. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he had a meeting with the IMF First Deputy Managing Director David Lipton before that, prior to the mission coming here. According to the latest report, based on the mission and that meeting, the discussions on the new program are continuing. And here's a quote. The mission had productive discussions on policies for new program over the last 2 weeks, especially on fiscal and monetary policies, as well as key reform measures. It also underscored the importance of central bank independence and safeguarding financial stability, as well as the need to make every effort to minimize the fiscal costs of bank resolutions. This is a quote by IMF. How productive will the further dialogue between Ukraine and the representatives of IMF be?
This is not a kind of extraordinary situation. We faced such kind of tensions between Ukraine and IMF over the last decades, basically almost from the beginning when we became our relations and cooperation with this organization. So it means that right now IMF told very clearly what they want to do and what they want Ukraine to do and to be done. But Ukraine now has his homework to basically develop new approaches and on one hand satisfy some suggestions which were done by IMF, but at the same time perhaps propose some additional ideas which will make IMF more or less easy in the situation. So on my point of view, it won't be a big problem for Ukraine and IMF, because IMF is interested in Ukraine, the same as Ukraine is interested in IMF. So this is normal way of negotiation, especially when IMF understand that they have new parties to communicate with. Of course, this is the government of Ukraine. This is something which they know for long years. But at the same time, they are new leaders, totally new, with perhaps new approaches and young energy, as we say. So basically, it's a normal way of negotiation to achieve common goals and some sort of compromise. So from my point of view, we don't have to look at the situation as to a difficult situation. It's just normal way of negotiation between IMF and Ukraine.
It's just a negotiation process.
It's just negotiation process.
Okay, we have negotiations with IMF, we have a new and energetic team, and we have a vision plan, but we need an action plan. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
That was Dmitry Vasilyev. He's a political expert. Thank you so much for watching UA TV. Stay tuned for more.